Hey guys, I'm Jeremy Reese with Water Mission, and I'm going to show you today all of the different components that you're going to get when you get your water treatment system for your demo. This will be installed at your event, and this will have, I'll do an inventory of everything that you should receive, and then we'll walk through just exactly how you're going to set that up, what the easiest way to set it up, maybe some common troubleshooting things that we want to avoid so that you guys can make water for your group just as quickly as possible with as few errors as possible. Okay, so we're going to do a quick inventory of everything that you guys are going to get. This will be shipped to you probably by me, but Jess will make sure that you have all the details necessary to get this to you. So hopefully by now you've got your living water treatment system. That's this big guy right here. And I'll show you how to break that down and get everything out here in just a second. But first we're just going to run through all the different components. You're also going to get this pallet right here, and it's going to have a white cover over the top of it that says Water Mission on it. And inside of that cover, you're going to get all of these different things. So this is your metal tap stand. This is what is actually going to feed all of your walkers. They're going to get their water from right here just by pushing a button. You're going to get two hoses. One will have a red tag on it right here, and one will have a yellow tag on it right here. You're also going to get a garden hose, if you can see down here in the bottom. Your red tagged hose is also going to have this on-off ball valve right here, and it should also include some hose clamps on the end of it, and we'll send you some extra hose clamps just to make sure that you have enough. You're also going to get, if you can't maybe see it, but right here on the back side there's a Grundfos SP1-8, and that's your submersible pump, and it will have the fittings already on the top of it so that you can plug up a clear braided hose. The hose that we talked about before will plug right onto there, and then you'll tighten it on with a hose clamp. It's also going to be pre-wired. I think we have 50 feet of wire on here so that you should have plenty of reach to get to your water source. Down here in the bottom, because of shipping, we couldn't fit this pipe in, so you're going to be responsible for attaching this pipe into right here, and I'll show you that step here shortly, because you're also going to have to put some Teflon around the end of this before you connect it so that it's watertight and doesn't leak everywhere. Down here in the bottom, you also have your IO50. This is your on-off switch. So this will go to your pump, this will go to your power source, and you're just going to turn it on and turn it off, and that's going to regulate whether water's coming out or not. Alright, moving on from this pallet, you're also going to receive, whether it's in this pretty box or not, you're also going to receive a 4x6 swimming pool. That will be your water source. That's what your pump is going to go down into. You're going to receive a Kohler N-Cube, which will provide you with about 2 to 3 hours of power. Should you not have access to a grid power anywhere close by, you won't be able to run extension cords. You can use the Kohler N-Cube as your power source, so we include that as an option. Inside of here, we've included some zip ties so that when you go to pack this back up, you can wrap everything neatly the way we have it now. This is the power cord for your Kohler N-Cube, so you can plug it into grid power to recharge it. And also in here I've included a 5/16 nut driver, a box cutter to cut your zip ties, and an adjustable crescent or an adjustable wrench so that you can take the lid off of your LWTS. We'll get into that in just a second. And lastly, not lastly quite yet, we've included an 85-watt solar panel. So I'll show you how to plug that up. It's very easy to plug up to your Kohler N-Cube so that you can demonstrate the capabilities of solar. And that's a really easy connection. And then I've also included a 250-gallon IBC tank. This will serve as your backwash tank. It'll go on top of your system. Today we're going to use it just as more or less your distribution tank. And we'll connect that directly to your tap stand. The only thing that we haven't included here that's not pictured right now is your extension cord, and I will also include that. Just a regular 110 extension cord should be attached in your kit as well. Okay, so we'll talk about some assembly next. What I've done is I just cut off the stretch wrap off of the outside. That'll be on it when you first get it. So I'm unpacking your system right now, and I'm going to show you how to hook up the distribution tank fill really quick. So if you look right here, we have these cage rails that are on the top, and I've pre-loosened some of these. You're going to want to use the adjustable wrench that came on top of your Kohler N cube. So right here, this little guy's in the top of your Kohler N cube. And I would just use that to kind of break it loose. And then I'm unscrewing it by hand. They should come out pretty easy because we just put this top on right before we shipped it to you. So, all right, and we're gonna take it out. There are some sharp edges just right here on the edges of these rails, so you just might want to be careful for that when you're. And I'm gonna set this out of the way. We're not gonna use it again for the remainder of setting up this demo, so you can put it wherever you want to put it to get it out of the way, so your people that are walking don't actually see it. I'm going to save this parts box, so every one of your systems should have this. If you didn't get one, make sure you notify us immediately, but we'll make sure that we include that whenever we send a system out. And inside of this parts box is going to be everything that you need in order to have a successful install. Okay. So these are going to be for your distribution tank fill, and I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. So I'm going to walk over here to my IBC tank. You want to make sure that you do this before you put the tank up on top, because otherwise you have to have somebody scale the side of the system to be able to screw it back on. It's not really the safest thing in the world, so make sure you take the top off first. And then I'm going to take the parts that I just pulled out of this bag, and we're going to set up. So in this bag, just going to show you really quick the different parts. So this guy is going to thread down into here, and this is going to be your inlet. So that tank that we just took this off of, your water's going in right here, and then we're also going to put a vent threaded in right here. You want to make sure before you, all this is for air venting so that your water bottle doesn't go when you fill it up. Yeah, that's the technical definition. So you're going to thread this in, and then you're going to put this on right here like that. And then this is going to thread back onto the top here. I want to show you one other thing really quick, and then we'll take a little break. So your hose is going to hook up right here, and again, I would recommend that you hook up this hose before we put the tank on top so that you don't have to scale the side. The other thing that you're going to need out of this parts box is these little guys right here. This is your air release valve. On your system, on both of these tanks, this is your F1 tank and this is your F2 tank. You need to make sure that you very carefully thread these straight in. One of the most common problems that we have is people cross-threading these so that it's actually sticking out at an angle, and it's going to just shoot water out of the top of there if you do that. So you want to very carefully thread that in so that it's straight up and down, parallel to the tank. Okay, and we're going to put that hand tight. You should never have to take a pair of pliers and tighten this down. You should be able to do it hand tight. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, guys, inside your parts box here, I'm going to take, you're going to get one of these with the red tape on the outside, and then this is a 2" by 1" reducing barb, and you're just going to attach these together if they're not already together in your system. And this is going to screw onto the front of your IBC tank. And then I'm going to get a hand while we're standing here to help lift this box off of the top of your tap stand. And you can totally use this box just as a backdrop or whatever else. Hopefully it'll be nice and clean from the move, but we're just using it basically for protection to protect your system here. So inside of here, I mentioned before, you've got your color-coded hoses. So I'm going to take my box cutter, cut the zip tie on that. And we're going to take my nut driver, which has walked away from me. So I'm going to hook this up. So you'll notice that we color-coded it, so red goes to red. And this fitting, this is the inlet to your tap stand. So you're just gonna, there should already be a hose clamp And we're just going to slide that up over top and then tighten it down with your 5/16 nut driver. And you're going to get that good and snug. And you'll know pretty quickly if you have any leaks here, so you can just turn it a couple more times if you need to. Okay? The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other hose, my yellow hose. And like I said, you want to make sure that you connect this hose before you put your tank on top of the LWTS. And once you put it up on top, then it becomes a lot harder to get to. I need another hose clamp, which will also be in your parts box that we talked about before. And while we're here, so again, color coding, we have yellow connecting to yellow, and this will be your inlet. Into your tank. And again, just going to snug it down with your nut driver. Okay, now you're ready to set this up on top. So we're just about ready to put your IBC tank, your water tank up on top of the system. One thing that I need to do first, you can do it afterwards, but it gets really difficult once you put your tank on. If you can see right here, I'm just loosening this clamp ring. And you're going to take this clamp ring off. And inside of this chlorinator dome are your handles, which are going to go on the outside of your system. Set these right here for a second. So when you put this clamp ring back on, you want to make sure that you get it square. This is probably one of the more common places where people get it on crooked and it'll leak a little bit. And if you can see right here, there's a little bit of a gap in between there. The idea is you should be able to hand tighten this in order to prevent it from leaking. You should be able to hand tighten it until these two edges touch. And that should be tight enough to prevent it from leaking. While we're right here, I'm going to show you one of the more common trouble points also. This is your pressure relief valve. If you, for some reason, are running too much pressure through the system, or you close the outlet, this will keep you basically from blowing up the system, keep you from putting too much pressure on it. So this is going to pop, and water will flow out of this side of it. Usually it's not a good time if that happens, especially unless it's a really hot day and you want to cool people off. But you just want to make sure that that's seated all the way down. You can hear it pop like that, and then you just screw that down until it just kind of seats properly. You should never need to worry about that, but if it does ever get set off so that water is coming out of there, just unscrew it. Make sure that it's pushed down and seated properly. Here, I'll see if I can get it to pop back into place so you can hear kind of what it's supposed to sound like when it seats. So you just loosen that wing nut and you push it down until you hear it click. And if it clicks into place, then you shouldn't have to worry about any more leaks. Okay, so we're going to take our handles, and if you notice on these handles, they're numbered. There's 1, 2, and 3, and they're going to go left to right. And these are going to seat in these holes. On the back side of this, you'll notice the little cutouts, and on the stem that's inside of there, they should fit exactly. Again, it's got little cutouts that match the stem. You can look inside of there, you can see where to fit that handle on there. Same thing on number 3. That one's gotten a little beat up over time. It's going to go like this. So what you're looking at here, you never want to close this all the way. If you close that all the way, your pressure relief valve is going to blow off in a really big hurry, and everybody's going to get wet. So you can throttle the flow a little bit, but we recommend just keeping this one open. For demo purposes, you really don't ever need to open to use this handle. For the chlorinator, you're not going to be putting chlorine in this water. And so I would probably recommend that, this is going to adjust how much chlorine. If you were actually putting chlorine tablets into this, then we would want to adjust it so that you were getting the appropriate dosing. But for your purposes for demo, you don't really have to worry about that. This guy right here is just going to point. It's just a flow direction. So you can see here, you can either make the water flow out of down here, which is where we would normally distribute from, or you could hook up to, or have water flow out of here. This is normally be our sample port. For today's application, we're going to make water flow out of our sample port. So we're going to make it point up so that water comes out through the flow meter and up here. And I'm going to show you in just a second how to hook that up. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take our tank, and we're actually going to move our tank over here and put it up on top. You need to get 2 or 4 people to make it to do your lift. Make sure that you don't have any back injuries.
Well, they're not 82 years old.
So common things that happen here that you're going to get frustrated with, if you look at the way that we put this on, we actually put the tank on exactly backwards, so it'll fit one of 2 ways. So I'm going to have to spin this tank 90 degrees because I want my distribution port to be right here. All right, now we already connected the red hose. And in just a second, I'm going to show you how to connect that to your IBC tank, and that'll be showing you how water is going to flow from your system to your tap stand. Earlier, you saw me connect this hose when we had the tank still on the ground. The other end of that hose is yellow. We connected it to the top of this tank to fill your tank. The other end of that hose is silver or gray, and we're going to connect it to your outlet on the living water treatment system. So I've already got my hose clamp on here. We talked about this a minute ago. Normally this would be your sample port, but for what we're doing today, we're going to use it as our distribution port. So we're going to feed this on here. A little trick, guys, when you're putting these hoses on, if you don't push it all the way up against here, up against the elbow, it'll be a lot easier for you when you go to break this down after your event. So put the hose on, slide it up over the barb, but don't push it up so far that you can't get it back off of that hose barb when you're ready to break down. Probably should have told you guys that before, but at least on the last 3 that you do, you'll be all right. So, all right, we're gonna snug that down. Okay, then we also did the red tape hose, connected it to our tap stand. Now we're gonna take the other end of that, and we're going to tie it back in to your distribution tank. So you're starting to get a little bit of a sequence here that you can kind of see, where you have water coming from your treatment system up to your tank, and then from your tank down into your tap stand. And the point of that is you can actually, as you're operating the system, depending on how much flow you want coming out, you can let your pump run for a little while and fill this tank up, so you actually get some pressure coming out of your tap stand. The more this fills up, the harder the water is going to come out of your tap stand. One other thing I'm going to show you while we're right here is we're going to go ahead and screw this guy. I'm going to take some Teflon tape, which is also included in your parts box. We're going to take some Teflon. This will probably have Teflon, but after a couple of times of this screwing in and screwing out, Teflon's going to probably get kind of worn out. So you may just have to reapply. We're going to wrap the end of that, and then we're going to thread this long pipe in a 6th tap position and tighten it down. Again, you shouldn't need a pipe wrench or anything to tighten this down. Okay? And so that'll be hand snugged down. While we're out here working on the tap stand, I'm going to go ahead and pull off my extension cord. Put it to the side. I'm going to go ahead and cut loose my pump cable, pump wire. And then we're going to loosen up these hose clamps a little bit. Be careful anytime you're using these hose clamps. We included some gloves with your shipment. It's a good idea to have some gloves with you when you're breaking these open. These hose clamps are probably the most common reason for injuries for water emission in the field. As crazy as that sounds, these things have some sharp edges on them, and people tend to cut themselves on them actually pretty frequently. So just make sure that you use a little bit of caution when you're working around those hose clamps. So I'm just going to loosen this up enough. I can pull it loose, pull it out of kind of our makeshift harness there. And you can just leave those hose clamps around there. I don't think it detracts too much from the aesthetics of the system. So we're just going to leave those around there during the operation unless you just really feel like you don't like the way it looks. And I'm going to lay this pump to the side for a second. And next I'm going to show you how to set up your swimming pool. So the next thing we're going to show you is how to put the little kiddie swimming pool together. This will be your water source, and it'll be where your water dumps into out of the tap stand. So it's fairly intuitive, and we'll make sure we include some directions for how you guys should put it together, but we're going to run through it really quick just so you have something to watch while you're trying to snap it together. So here we go. So now that we got the pump or the pool put together, the next thing to do is to take your pump. We took loose from the tap stand earlier, and we're going to take the 25-foot section of hose that's included in your tap stand, and it has a green tag on it. We're going to connect green tag to green tag. So I just put this hose over the hose barb and then tighten the nut on here. When you drop this in the water, one thing that's like a really common error, a really common thing that people don't realize, right here on the wire, this is a water sensor, liquid level sensor it's called. If this little spot right here on the wire is not underwater, then your pump won't flow. It's a protection built in to keep the pump from running dry. So before you get on the phone and you holler at Jessica or me or whoever and say, hey, I can't get my pump to work, just make sure that that little liquid level sensor is underwater. If it's not, when you put it underwater, you may have to cycle, so like turn it off, turn it back on again, and then it should come on if that was the problem in the first place. I'm going to take the other end of that hose, and I'm going to hook it up to the inlet on the LWTS. Okay, so you've got a hose clamp, and I'm just going to feed that over. It's a lot easier if you feed that hose clamp over the hose before you stick it on the hose barb, because otherwise you have to loosen the hose barb all the way out, or the hose clamp all the way out to be able to fit it on there, and then tighten it back down again. So just go ahead and slide it over the hose in the first place. I'm sliding the hose up over the hose barb. This one's a little bit tricky because it's kind of tight right there, but you want to make sure that you have a good snug connection right here, because this is under pressure. And again, I didn't slide that hose all the way up on that hose barb because I want to make it easy for you guys when you go to disconnect all of this. Okay, the way that I set this up, you can kind of see the whole circle here now. So water's being pumped out of your pool into your water treatment system. From the water treatment system, it's going up to your distribution tank. From the distribution tank, it's flowing down into the tap stand, and then it'll be flowing out of the tap stand back into your water source. So you're kind of making a circle there, circulating the water. And a little bit later we'll show you just how the water's going to flow, how you can kind of regulate how much flow you have, how you can turn it on and off, and how to get power to your pump. So when we're talking about getting electricity to your pump, we have a lot of different options that we're going to provide you guys with. The first one that I'm going to run through is to assume that you guys have grid power, or 110 power that you could just plug into the wall. So that's why we've included just a standard extension cord. So I would plug this into just any 110 outlet and and I'm going to plug the female end into your switch box. So this is an IO50 switch box, and you just plug the two of these together, and then this will fit your plug on your pump. So you're just going to plug the two of those together, and then as soon as you switch this on, if everything's configured properly, then you should start making water, and you'll hear the pump kind of cycle. It'll go toom, toom, and then it'll start pumping water. If that doesn't happen, within the first couple of seconds, then you know you got some kind of troubleshooting problem that we need to figure out. So that's a really simple way of installing it, but I know some of you guys are going to be doing demos or events or walks in kind of remote locations where you don't necessarily have easy access to grid power. In that scenario, I am not going to use the IO50. We're going to leave it here. We provided you guys with an 80-watt solar panel. That 80-watt solar panel will not keep up. You're going to discharge power into the pump faster than you're going to charge with that solar panel. But it gives you the nice option to be able to talk about the solar element, and Water Mission does a ton of solar installations around the world. So it kind of gives you a nice talking piece as people are coming by or whatever. So on the back of your N-Cube and on the back of the solar panel, you have a male and a female connection. And on the back of the N-Cube unit, you can plug these up. It's just a rubber boot connection, just like that. And then, inside of the lid here, we included a jumper. So you can go from your pump, plug these two together, and then on the front of the N-Cube unit, you have a lot of different plugs. So you can charge your cell phone or charge whatever you want to here. For our use today, you need to use AC 120. So you're going to plug in right there, and then you're going to push on. I'm not going to push on right now because I don't want my pump to run dry, but we'll show you guys the unit actually working once we put some water into the pool. We put the garden hose in here so you guys have an option to be able to if you got a spigot somewhere you can hook up to, fill your pool up with water. Sometimes you have to truck water to get water in the pool, but there's a lot of different options for how to fill up your pool. But those are kind of your two standard installations for how you're going to get power to your pump. By no means, you don't have to use the solar panel to get power to your N-Cube. Your N-Cube should run for about 2.5 hours without having any power going into it. If you're doing like a multi-day event and you know that you want to run the N-Cube today and then you're going to run it again tomorrow, you can plug it in overnight, let it charge back up again, and then use it the next day for another 2.5 hours again. So it adds a lot of flexibility to our demo installations. That's everything I'm going to show you right now. Like I said, we're gonna fill the pool up with water and show you guys how to kind of regulate the flow of your water, and then that'll wrap things up. Okay, so we showed you how to hook up everything, how to build your swimming pool, how to do all of your connections to the living water treatment system. Just a couple of things. We try to make this as flexible as possible because we don't know what your space is necessarily going to look like. So you can have the pool in front of the system, you can bring the pool over to this side and turn the tap stand so that water's coming out of this side. You have a lot of flexibility. Obviously, whichever side of the system that people are going to be walking up to, you probably want to keep any hoses tucked behind it, just to keep people from tripping, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm just going to show you really quickly the two ways that we kind of went over. I'm going to show you how to cut the water onto this system. Just a quick note, when you do turn the water on and the pump actually starts running water, it'll probably take a few minutes for water to actually start going into your top tank. And the reason for that is because those green filter vessels, the green tanks that are inside of the system, obviously have air in them, and so until that water comes up and fills up those tanks, it's not going to start overflowing up into the tank on top. So don't get stressed out if you notice that water's running. You're probably in good shape. This pump is really quiet, so you can't even hear it running, but you will start to see water moving through your hoses, and you'll start to hear air coming out the top of those filter tanks, okay? Again, back to aesthetics. Like I said, you guys can set it any way you want to. You can position the solar panel however you want to. where you don't even have to hook it up if you don't want that particular part, but we do include it because we know that it makes just an extra kind of talking point for you guys as you're doing your install. So I showed you guys yesterday. Again, the N-Cube will give you 2 to 2.5 hours probably of power for this pump, because this pump doesn't draw very much. So depending on the length of your event, you might be able to use just the N-Cube to power and to provide, to get water moving through your system. So on the pump, you've got a 4-prong male plug right here, and then I included the jumper. I think I showed you guys that. You'll be able to plug that jumper into the N-Cube, and then you'll be able to connect these two plugs together. And it is a turn lock plug, so when you plug it together, you can turn it so that it won't come back apart, and it'll stay together like that, okay? And then once you've got it connected, it's really just as simple as turning it on right here. And it'll beep a little bit as it fires up. You're moving water into your filter tanks. I already filled the tanks on this one, that's why you hear water going into the top tank. And then once we get a little bit of water, before I show you that, I'm going to show you the other way, this other really simple way of connecting power to the pump. So I'm going to shut this off. Again, right now I just have the Kohler N-Cube plugged into grid power, so it's running on it's recharging on 110, but again, it will discharge power faster than it will charge. So after you discharge it, you'll have to plug it back in to recharge it. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect right here. And I'm going to take this switch box that you got included. This is called an IO50. I'm going to make sure that it's switched off to start with. Inside of here, inside of this dial, it has an off. And then when you turn it on, you can see on through there. So we're going to connect this to your pump. And again, it has the same style of plug. So you twist it and it locks into place. And I'm going to take the extension cord that I'm charging my N-Cube off of and disconnect it. I'm just plugging into grid power here. So now we have juice going to our IO50. And then you can just flip the switch to on. And you'll start making water. Again, just make sure that your liquid level sensor is underwater. That's probably the most common thing that keeps people from being able to make water. They forget to put that little liquid level sensor underwater. So what I like to do is I like to let this tank actually fill up a little bit. Obviously that might be limited a little bit based on how much water you've got, how many walkers you've got that are going to be dumping water into your pool. On the end of this piece that I showed you how to put on, there's a cap, and you can just disconnect that cap. Take it off of there, put it somewhere where you're not going to lose it. That's probably not a good place. Once this tank gets up a little bit, you'll be able to see the water level rising in this tank. I like to let it get up to about this first bar at least here before I actually start letting water distribute through the tap stand. But if we open up this green gate valve that's right here on the bottom, then you'll start pushing water out to your tap stand. As your tank up here fills up more, water will start coming out of here a lot faster. Once you get some kind of pressure coming from up here in the tank, then you can let water flow out of here. If you want to, you can put your cap back on here and just use your cap here. So you just bump these and water will come out. But for most of your walks, most of your events, you're probably not even going to use the tap stand. You just want to be able to show that as kind of a talking point of this is the actual tap stand that we use in most of our installations around the world. So, one other thing I wanted to touch on really quick, just as a troubleshooting thing. Inside of here, on the top of these tanks, you'll remember that we installed these brass air relief valves. So, on top of that little air relief valve, there's a little black plug. And to let all the air out of those tanks, when I open that, you can probably hear a faint whistle. That's the rest of that air. You notice there's a lot of bubbles going up here. You want to try to get all that air out of those tanks. So I'm just going to loosen that up until I hear air start to flow out of there. I'm going to do it on both of them. And once that you hear that hiss stop, then you'll be able to, you can go ahead and cinch that back down and close that so that you're not letting any air into the system. So you guys should not have to worry, unless you're using extremely dirty water, you won't really ever have to worry about backwashing the system. Like I said, if you do put a lot of dirt and stuff into the water to really show the system how it's cleaning the water, if you do have very turbid water, then you will probably have to backwash just to keep that water flowing. But we'll tell you, you guys how to do that before we get the system to you, if you're afraid that you are going to have to do it. So that's pretty much everything that you need to know in order to have a successful demo. Good luck. We hope you guys have great events, and we're really excited to hear about your feedback of what went really well and hopefully nothing went really poorly. So have fun, enjoy setting it up, and yeah, have a great event.